Welcome to our second Lunch and Learn. My name is Max Casero. I'm the owner of Prism Integrated Health here in Austin, Texas. We are a currently fully online telehealth organization that focuses on behavioral health, but we supplement that with psychiatry and medical nutrition, which is why our lovely Madeline is here. Madeline is one of our fantastic registered dietitians. It's much earlier in the day where she is because licensing is wonderful. So I'm going to let Madeline introduce herself, and then we're going to get moving. So take it away.
All right. So I am Madeline Patterson-O'Dell. I am a registered dietitian. I'm also a certified diabetes educator, and I have been since 2002. I became interested in dietetics because I learned that when I ate differently, I felt a lot better. So I thought I would also take you on my personal journey into why I now know too much about environmental factors and how that will impact the gut. So, and you will kind of get to know me a little bit along the way. I think I was your typical dietitian. We are taught certain things in school. We are not taught other things in school. I came from Meredith College. It's a small women's university in Raleigh, North Carolina. It happened to be 10 minutes away from where I lived. And I was pregnant with my first son, and I had him a week after I started. So that began my journey. But also I had a professor, Dr. Landis, who required that I do reading of research. And so that started me off going to pubmed.gov and reading research. And so with everything that I say to you today, I would encourage you to go to pubmed.gov and also look up things you're interested in. If you hear some peculiar sounding information or ideas from people, pubmed.gov is your worldwide database as to who's done research and who's been published, and it's peer reviewed. So I particularly like that. And so I will not be foolproof or fully accurate today because my memory changes things every time I say them. But my goal is to give you ideas and understandings that you would have never had, because these things are not seen on the news or anywhere else, nor has anybody read specific journal articles that I have read and put them together into a tapestry or puzzle as I see them. So this is just my particular take on the world. So I want to talk with you about 3 herbicides today. I want to talk with you about heavy metals and plastics, 2 particular plastics, one called BPA and the other called phthalates. And the heavy metal that I'll be most concerned with is cadmium because it lasts the longest. A lot of people are up in arms about lead, but lead can be gotten rid of a lot more easily than cadmium can. And then we may not think of antibiotics as being an environmental factor, but along with antibiotics, when we're exposed to heavy metals, that's when we have the greatest impact to the gut. Like, let's just say the gut is exposed to cadmium because it naturally occurs in soil. We would have maybe not even a detrimental impact, but if we have an antibiotic exposure and then a cadmium exposure, that's when we would see a big burst of, I guess, the population of certain bacteria do things they wouldn't normally do. It's changed their environment. It's changed their life so much that they become very different. And what matters about this and the gut is that we rely on their postbiotics. We rely on what they're putting out. A long time ago, we used to think that the enzymes that broke down our food were just us, that we did this for ourselves. But now we're realizing that those gut bacteria, they are making the enzymes that will digest our food for us. And so that's why they are so significant and why we want to talk about them today. So going back to, and I don't want to forget to tell you, all of this boils down to, what is the gut bacteria putting out? Is it putting out butyrate, or is it putting out some kind of propionate type product? And I had a cheat sheet because I was unfamiliar with the propionate. Propialdehydes. There you go. Something like that. But it is not good. In other words, it's damaging your gut if they're putting out these other waste products because of their unhappy experience. So in order to regain our health, we want to normalize the experience of the gut bacteria. We want to continue to do things that would be more traditional. Nothing fancy, just something like eating a vegetable. And I have a great citation that I shared with Max, and I think she could probably post that. But in that citation, it kind of covers the gambit of they name the different bacteria that are responsible and associated with certain chronic diseases, not only type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes. And so there will be a lot of names thrown out. But in order to bring this more to, your own personal interest, how could a person sit and read some of these dry things and learn about Akkermansia and Roseburia and Oxalobacter? And man, it was really uncomfortable and unpleasant. Well, I love that I can see your dog, because I'm going to pull in my brother's dog. This is my true life story. I was living with my brother in Denver, Colorado. After leaving Alaska, I tried to escape the cold weather. And so he had a cute little dog. The dog's name was Salty. And Salty was young and healthy looking. And then after maybe 2.5 years, I wasn't with my brother anymore, but I heard that Salty died. And it really hurt me and impacted me. And I was like, why did this healthy little dog have kidney failure and die? So I go to my trusty PubMed and I type in dog and kidney failure, right? Up comes a 50-page study that was written by Simsel, I think Anthony Simsel out of MIT. And I printed off this study, and I didn't have time to read it for a while. But then I think it was Easter, and I put my feet upon the couch and started to crack the big stack. And then I see all of these dog foods listed that don't have anything called AMPA or glyphosate. And if I'm using some terms and you're like, what is she talking about? Just kind of wave at me and ask me to explain, and that'll be okay. But when we spray a field, we spray it in the United States, most often now with something called glyphosate. It is the leading herbicide in the United States. So I think everybody ought to know what's on their food. And is it truly on our food? Absolutely on our food. And if you want to check out, I'm going to diverge for a moment. And there are lots of studies that I've read. If you go to PubMed.gov and you type in oats, like as in oatmeal, oats, and you type in a capital A-N-D, and you type in glyphosate, and another A-N-D, and N-I-S-T, NIST, National Institutes for Science Technology, that is a government agency that makes gadgets to help people. And one of their new gadgets is to detect how much glyphosate is in the food. So after developing their gadget that tests glyphosate and AMPA, which is the byproduct or breakdown product of glyphosate, they tested 13 samples of these oats. And they said of the 13 samples, all of them had high levels of glyphosate, except for the one that was organic. That one had low levels of glyphosate. And so that just struck me, wow, everybody is trying to be healthy and eating oats. And I happen to know that since 2013, the legal limit of this dry harvesting agent, which usually is our herbicide, it's been repurposed because now we have super weeds. So they're using it as a drying agent. So they increase the legal limit from 15 parts per billion to 30, 40, or 40 in some cases. Or for in animal feed, it's legally allowed to be 310 parts per million. So we have some really dramatic changes occurring to our food system that most people are really not aware of. And unless you've read each of these studies, you may not put all these pieces together. And so if I'm going to eat oatmeal, I actually shared this with one of my patients who sent me a photo of some oatmeal that I would eat. And I love them because now I eat 1 degree oats. It's organic, but it's also glyphosate free. And so you can obtain things, and they got it at Costco of all places. And so that was very exciting to me that the market will bend to what people are asking for. So if you start asking for organic glyphosate-free oats, and they will find it. They want to sell you what you're willing to buy. If you're willing to buy any other brands of things, they will sell you whatever it is you're willing to buy. But if you require something that is poison-free, well, they will get it for you. And it's not that expensive. Okay, so my deviation is I'm looking at all these brands of dog food that have low levels of AMPA and glyphosate. And I'm trying to decide which one should we get for our dog so our dog doesn't die like my brother's dog. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we eat this stuff too. we eat this stuff too. And I'm thinking, am I really going to continue to eat these dry goods that have been desiccant sprayed heavily with all of this herbicide? I couldn't do it. That was the moment that I totally changed my food, my diet. I dropped 30 pounds in a month, and not because I stopped eating ice cream. I simply changed to the organic version of everything because, like the NIST study shows, it's not glyphosate free. Organic will not protect you from glyphosate. It will lower it. And I wanted to do whatever I could to lower the level. At that time, I was a bit novice, right? And so, I just, threw away all my spices, and once a month I'd buy a new spice. So one significant thing that I read in that article that made my jaw drop. I mean, it was a mighty long article, and yes, it was the dog foods, right? But I'm a diabetes educator, and there was a sentence I saw that was shocking to me. And it was glyoxylate glycates more than fructose sugar. What does this mean? Would the general public know what this means? I know what this means. This means that the breakdown product of glyphosate, because there's a pathway, and as it breaks down, part of it ends up as AMPA and part of it ends up as glyoxylate. And so the glyoxylate part of the glyphosate breakdown is what causes fructose and proteins, most of the time glycine proteins and fructose sugar, clump together. But it could also happen with glucose and one of the other proteins. But this pairing is called glycation. And that pairing is what the A1C measures, right? And so I'm reading that glyoxylate glycates more than fructose sugar. And I'm thinking, and we're spraying this all over our food. Wow. And nobody is suggesting we stop doing this or reduce this for people who have prediabetes or diabetes. Why? Why not? So that was pretty big to me. Now, another article that I stumbled across by accident, which is very related, was in Plant Toxicology. And if right now you go to pubmed.gov and you type in the word Aldo Keto, ALDO-KETO, Aldo Keto, you can pull up, and glyphosate, you can pull up an article that shows, and then there's a secondary article. I think it's not in plant toxicology, but there's a ECACR41 gene. So these are names of genes. And if we have this environmental herbicide touching a plant cell or an animal cell, and remember now for our animals who are eating these corn grains, they're getting massive amounts of glyphosate. That's touching the bacterial cells in our animals. So in either way, whether it's Aldo Keto gene turning on or whether it's ECACR41 gene turning on, either gene, and there's probably more, but these are just the two that I read a study on. So these genes turn on, and their main job is to save the life of the cell. One is a rice cell, the other is an animal or a bacterial cell. And in order to save the life, the gene turns on, it oxidizes glyphosate into what? Glyoxylate. The cell is now a glyoxylate producer. Where is it producing this? In your rice, right? The plant becomes a generator of something that is a glycator, a maker of what the A1C measures, right? And so whether in the animal cell or in the plant cell, we now have glyoxylate. And so it could be in the rumen of the cow, or it could be in your own gut. If you are eating a lot of corn chips that have high glyphosate on them, you could potentially be exposing your own gut bacteria to enough glyphosate to make your own glyoxylate. Well, they're now using glyoxylate as a marker 3 years before the first high blood sugar. We can tell people are on their way to diabetes by measuring glyoxylate. It is a new marker. So glyoxylate is a factor. I think it may just be a marker. I think it may just be a marker of what is occurring in the gut. I went to a diabetes conference last year, and they talked about Lactospiracea. So we've got different classes of bacteria and different phyla, and I'm not a bacterial expert, but I do know there's an umbrella. And you know, we've got some that are called firmicutes, some that are called Bacteroides. And the firmicutes, we consider them, you know, healthy people have large amounts of both of these. But when people become unhealthy, we see one of them that begins to explode, and the little types that are in there start to change. What they're making inside of us start to change. And one of them is Lactospiracea. And they are blaming different chronic disease states on different bacteria in the firmicute category, if that makes sense. And so one of my patients said, well, where do we get this Lactospiracea? Can't we just avoid it or take some medication and get rid of it? And so I thought, well, let's look at that. And so historically, Lactospiracea is in all humans. It is a healthy part of our digestion. It makes mucus for us. It puts out butyrate for us. So we want it. We don't not want it. But what's happening is when it is sick-making, when it becomes sick-making, it stops making butyrate. It grabs a gene from a passerby that allows it to now encapsulate. I think we might have mentioned this last time I was talking. And that encapsulation keeps it from death. And that population of that particular kind with that gene explodes. And that's when we see the HOMA B analysis showing in mice that have received a swab of this type of bacteria. The HOMA B shows that animal that received this type of bacteria no longer can make insulin. and their fasting sugars go up. So we are absolutely changing our landscape of what's inside of us by exposure to poison that these bacteria have never had to deal with in the past. Okay, so far we've talked a lot about glyphosate and how that's changing the landscape of the gut bacteria and their capability. We are no longer symbiotic with them if we are killing them. And they will do whatever they have to do to survive, even if it means that we are diseased. And so if you want to change back your landscape, stop poisoning them and eat foods that are legally not allowed to have a lot of herbicide on them. Or organic is one way that I have been coping with this. Also knowing that all fruits and vegetables are legally not allowed to have much. So I'm really big on fruits and vegetables. Also I just observe as a clinician, I observe that people are doing better with root fruit and hard squash. That's my take on it. Why? I would suppose because they don't get direct exposure, or certainly not at the highest level. I also observe that of the grains, perhaps the rice is something that is more tolerable for my people who have really bad GI distress and they just don't tolerate much. Rice seems to be pretty good. So I give them or recommend that they try out, short grain organic brown rice. But also I would, if we're going to go the route of a grain, I use the 1 degree glyphosate free oats. And 1 degree makes a variety of different grains. Many of them are glyphosate free. Many of them are glyphosate free and organic. And so that's what I do. If I'm making an apple pie, I go buy 1 degree glyphosate free, and then they have this variety. I just pick one of the flours. I also use a bit of cassava and tiger nut flour, and those can be an alternate for wheat. I want to say for a minute, of the heavy metals, wheat, different species like to pick up cadmium. Wheat appears to be one of them. Some of the research is allowing me to know that they're working to genetically modify a wheat that doesn't pick up cadmium. So I'm unsure if some of our hybridized wheats are better at picking up cadmium than others. I have no way of knowing whether the ancient grains picked up less before we started monkeying around with them. But in general, I try to pick species of things that were on the planet 100 years ago before they did hybridizing or genetic modification. They have used a shotgun approach with GM things. I'm not opposed to technology. What I am opposed to is perhaps the pitfalls of late stage capitalism, but just the not sharing of information. So I want to have knowledge. I want to be able to decide. And I think that's really important. So back to the cadmium. So if we're looking at the kind of switching away from the glyphosate to the heavy metal cadmium, why is this so important? And our gut bacteria put out postbiotics that affect something called histones. And histones affect our genes. And we've got multiple ways to turn on and off genes. And so we call the sheath, the straw around the DNA, we call that the epigene. And that sheath is made up of something called methyl groups. And if you are eating a whole bunch of beet greens, you're going to have a whole bunch of methyl groups. Your body will be highly equipped to make plenty of that sheath. And the work of Randy Girdle at Duke University, it was great with showing that even if you have high exposure to BPA plastic, when the cell divides, such as when the mother mouse is making a baby mouse, it will repair itself. And I just love that study because theoretically, 0.5% of all your cells replicate every day. So there is the potential that we can fix ourselves. And so getting back to every single cell, you've got so many cells in your body, but all of your cells have got that DNA, and that DNA is full of 101 diabetes genes, an obesity gene, an Alzheimer's gene, an asthma gene. And these are all in the areas that you want them to be wrapped up tight. When they are wrapped up tight, all those genes are off. Just because you have a breast cancer gene does not mean it's going to turn on, right? If you have a good epigene, a good sheath, a good wrapper, and you don't have a lot of BPA exposure or other hypomethylator exposures, then you can control which genes you turn off and on. You are supposed to be the controller of your genes. When you need a gene to turn on, say you're starving, you want your obesity gene to turn on. And if you're not starving, it will turn off. But if you have exposure of a hypomethylator, such as arsenic. So at the time, this was like 15 years ago, I wanted to know, what are all the hypomethylators, right? And so Randy showed me about BPA and how that works. And then I looked up arsenic and saw how that worked and realized that the government had just lowered the threshold that was okay, and that the man who delivered my water had to buy a new filter so that we could now meet this new threshold, right? And then more recently, I learned about cadmium and that it is one of the most powerful hypomethylators out there. And you can't just get it out of your body easily. It stays in you for a long time in your kidneys. One of the beautiful things I heard was, hey, guess what? If you have sufficient iron stores, you are less likely to pick up that cadmium. Now, here's another beautiful thing. In a traditional way of farming, we used to add cow manure to the soil, and the bacteria from the cow's belly was so rich and helpful and symbiotic that it would break down the naturally occurring cadmium in the soil. Well, when we stopped using cow manure and when we started using phosphate fertilizer, the phosphate fertilizer began adding cadmium to the soil. So for the last 50 years, we have added cadmium to our soil, right? And we have stopped adding bacteria from cow manure to our soil. So we are not degrading cadmium anymore. We are building it up. And so the two things that would increase the transition of cadmium from the soil to the foods are certain species of plants, right? And so I've learned a little bit about what species those are, as well as acidity. High acidity will pull cadmium out of the soil and put it into the plant. Guess what is high acidity? 310 parts per billion glyphosate. High acidity. We never used that much acidity before. So this is one route that we are getting cadmium back into our food or into our food. Now, a few of the plants that the last government sampling, because it used to be every 5 years or so, the government would do a sampling to see what kind of contaminants were in the plants. And after the law changed in 2013 that doubled this, we saw that I saw that the government check was kind of delayed, and then maybe they did one right after. And I can't remember if they've done a second, whether they've done only two or whether they've only done one. But it took me forever to get the data, because you have to sign up. You can't just go and look. You have to say why you want it, who you are, what's your email, what are you going to do with it? And then they send you like 6 folders of raw data. And I'm like, aha, what am I going to do with this? So I did my best to download into an Excel spreadsheet and just kind of poke around a little. And so I saw that, yes, the sunflower seeds were off the chart. The spinach was off the chart with cadmium. So those were the two that caught my attention because they were the worst according to the government data. And so will I be eating any spinach? Will I be eating any sunflower seeds? No. And so, maybe the organic would be different because maybe the organic fields wouldn't be, but it only takes 2 years before they can take a nasty field, right? Do nothing to it, put some sunflower seeds on it, grow them in an organic manner. 2 years after they were nasty fields, now those sunflower seeds are organic sunflowers that are filled with cadmium. So if you look at people who are struggling with their weight, please have massive compassion because I see what they're up against. So when I'm learning all of this, I'm really into food. I'm into autonomy. It matters to me that people have a choice, that they know what's happening. If you want to go out and eat cookies and ice cream, fine. That's your choice. But if you are struggling and you are trying to eat sunflower seeds because they are good for you and you have no idea that they are loaded with cadmium, come on, we've got to have something about this. So I thought, what am I ethically going to do? So I went to Washington. I joined a group. I thought, I'm going to change what's happening here. This is all about money and politics, and they're fine. People, corporations are not people. And if I can just get something changed, right? So I went there, and all these groups, people wanted some change, but then they were fighting each other. And then I was crying and I wanted to run out of there really fast. And I thought, oh, I can't do this. What can I do? What can I do? What do I know? Well, all I know is food. So when I came back to Alaska, I decided, well, I'll be a board member at a co-op. And so I became a board member at a co-op, and it was a 3-year term, but I spent all my time reading like calendars and bylaws, and I couldn't find an avenue to be effective. The one thing I felt I was able to change was the word natural means nothing. So I had them remove that. And at least I put the word healthful. I couldn't figure out some other word to put, but healthful indicates it's going to be good for your health, whereas natural has no legal meaning. So that was what I was able to change. Okay, so we have talked about glyphosate. We've talked about glyphosate's impact on cadmium because it's an acid, and it's clearly, our agricultural methods are clearly impacting cadmium, herbicides in our foods. Glyphosate itself is an antibiotic. And so if you treat something with an antibiotic and then you're exposed to the cadmium, we have this explosion of the wrong kinds of characters and behaviors in the digestive tract. They're not going to do for you what you want. And so the other 2 pesticides, and I just want to check on time. I've got a whole hour.
Yep, we've got 20 minutes.
Okay.
Let's call it 15 so we can wrap up.
Okay. So the other 2 pesticides, which I think are important environmental factors to mention, one of them, let's do the easy one first. So we've talked extensively about glyphosate, the leading U.S. herbicide, and now they'll shift it to a desiccant spray. And the way that the organic laws were written, it wasn't clear to me if that had to be excluded with organics. So organic isn't going to necessarily be glyphosate free. It'll be a lot less. But the second pesticide, so glyphosate is an herbicide and a desiccant dry harvesting agent. The pesticide I wanted to talk about is called chlorpyrifos. And I had been a dietitian for quite some time. I didn't want to know about any of these things at all.
Will you repeat that one more time?
Chlorpyrifos. And chlorpyrifos. And
can you put it in the chat? Can you put that word in the chat so we can write it down and see it?
Let me see if I can do that. And I'm a
Well,
notoriously bad speller, so you know what I'm gonna do
if it's close
is I've gone away from you and I hope I don't lose you. I'm gonna type it
enough.
in the Google because Google is a good speller. Chlor, CHLORPY. There it is. Okay. Okay. Uh-huh. I'm going to put this. Oh, this is beautiful. This is I think this is my article that I read. Yes. Yes.
So put it
Yes.
down in the one that
Love
looks
it.
like
Okay, I got
the
this.
text.
Okay, good.
Yep.
You're going to love this. Thank you so much for asking. Okay. So this is a beautiful article on chlorpyrifos. It was banned by the courts, I believe last year, but they didn't set a deadline to get it out of the food. And one of the reasons that it was banned is because zero is okay for what's allowed in water. And they're pretty touchy about water. They'll put anything in the food, right? But they're a little bit more careful about what they allow in water. So if you read this article or the abstract, you will see that it stops the UCP1 proteins, that's brown adipose tissue, from burning excess calories as heat. We are not intended to be calorie counters. We do not need to count calories. If we overeat, the UCP1 proteins are allowed to burn that off as heat, right? And so this article shows chlorpyrifos blocks this ability by the body. Come on, what are we doing? And this is still in the food. So I have been kind of up in arms about all of this. And for a while, I couldn't manage my emotions. So I had to sit home, and I actually went to work. Like literally, I went to work for an elder care facility where there was no choice. I didn't educate. I only gave, from whatever foods were available, because I didn't want to have to interface about these things and not tell the truth and not share the information. And I have had employers say, Madeline, you need to stair step the information, or you can't use the word plastics, or, you can't, they tailor what I said. So chlorpyrifos is clearly a pesticide that we do not want to be eating. And it is on walnuts. It is on soy. It is on healthy food if you are not buying organic. So that was one other reason that I stick to organic. And I literally, you cannot pay me $10,000 to go to a restaurant and eat a meal that isn't just some plain wild seafood. And yes, I know I'm swallowing plastics when I eat seafood, but that's the best I can do. And I only worry about the things that I can change, right? And I have a choice, and I can buy clothes from Value Village and go into town less often and burn less gas and choose more high quality food. And so that has been my choice. So that is chlorpyrifos. So the last herbicide I wanted to talk about, I only became aware of in about, I think 2016, 2017. And it was because of a family member. She lured me to her house under the pretense of watching a fun movie. Now, she knows me, I'm a little bit nerdy. And she said, let's watch Oasis, Madeline. And so I said, okay. And then she fessed up that it was for a class she was taking, like a environmental microbiology class. So I would recommend the movie Oasis. And in this movie was my first introduction to the first herbicide kind of thing. Before this, I foo-fooed organic. I didn't eat organic. Everything I knew about it was it's not worth it. The food isn't guaranteed to have more nutrient. No, it's not guaranteed to have more nutrient. That's all about soil content. But guess what? It's guaranteed to have less poison. So I watched this movie, and I was introduced to a man that works at Berkeley still now. His name is Tyrone B. Hayes, and he is my personal hero. And I did email him such. After watching this movie, I learned that atrazine used to be the leading herbicide in the United States. And that was before it was overtaken by glyphosate. And if you ask me, why do we have, and I didn't even mention this about the glyphosate. Why do we have viral susceptibility in the United States and worldwide? It, in my opinion, is about atrazine and glyphosate wham bam combination. This is all about white cells in our body, our immune cells. Are they going to keep bacteria and virus where they're supposed to be kept? And between atrazine and glyphosate, we've had a major assault on our immune cells. What I didn't mention about glyphosate is there's another article in PubMed. If you type in the word corn and glyphosate and fusarium, fusarium is the gut killer. It is a microfungus. After 11 years, our soils don't have normal bacteria anymore after using glyphosate. We have microfungus. And that microfungus leaves the soil and gets onto our food. And we have people every year that are dying of fusarium now. And I was such a curious girl, I looked up COVID and fusarium. And sure enough, about 30% of the people who were in the ICU in one study with COVID had a subinfection of fusarium. Fusarium or I think aspergillus. These are both microfungus. So we've got unhealthy soils. Fusarium in other studies are showing increased viral susceptibility. Why? Because of glyphosate and fusarium are breaking those junctions and allowing stuff to go into the bloodstream. The immune cells are seeing this. These are direct reasons why we have immune systems that are now so geared up for bacteria that they do not fight off virus, right? So the fusarium is on the rise, in my opinion, because of glyphosate, but the immune cells are suppressed because of fusarium and because of atrazine. Atrazine is still used. So Tyrone has showed that the immune cells are suspended. They just sit there. They're not doing their jobs because of atrazine. He was really intrigued with the behavior of our hormones because of atrazine. And so, if there's a WAM1, it's the immune function. If there's a WAM2, it's the hormones. If you look at a mast cell, it is going to be more stabilized if there is a progesterone, maybe a testosterone, not massive amounts of estrogen. Well, what Tyrone showed is not only in his studies, but then, once he was firm with, boy, is this a problem? We convert testosterone to aromatase to estrogen with atrazine. So this is a huge problem. We are eliminating testosterone because of atrazine. We're moving it to an intermediary stage called aromatase, and then it's being converted to a strong estrogen. And so, some people don't like the idea of eating soy because it's an estrogen. Well, boy, is that a weak estrogen in comparison. And we've destabilized our mast cells. And so that's more immune dysfunction. If you look at people with irritable bowel, with loose stools, we've got an explosion of certain spiroketobacteria. If you look at, and I have citations if anybody wants those, if you look at, so along with misbehaving immune cells, we have different populaces of gut bacteria that no longer work for us symbiotically. So Tyrone showed this, and he told his own story about working for this company, Syngenta, which has since, I think, changed its name to Novartis, if I'm not mistaken. And so we have behaviors in frogs and blood labs in farm workers that are all showing the same thing. We're having male frogs who make estrogen, who actually create oocytes. And if you look up in PubMed, Tyrone B. Hayes, I read his article about oocytes in male frogs. And those male frogs were treated as female frogs by the other frogs. And so we have a population, and now I'm going to pull in more about the plastics. Shauna Swan is out of a New York. I want to say she's an endocrinologist, but I think I've missed that. Mount Sinai. She's at Mount Sinai, and she's an educator and a researcher there on phthalates. And we've got phthalates in our food. We've got phthalates in our milk. We've got phthalates in our meat. We have phthalates in our shower products. And so if we can narrow our eating window and our shower window, then we give our body a break from phthalates, because within 4 hours, the high levels of phthalates drop, right? So the more time without those high phthalates I can give my poor body, the better it's going to work and the easier it's going to be for me. But her studies are showing that we've had a 50% drop in I want to say, I can't remember whether she was saying testosterone or sperm count, but we are absolutely not doing well because of herbicide, pesticide, phthalates, BPA, cadmium. It's this massive deluge, and you don't hear about it on the news, but it's all over the research. And who can read this research and talk about it in an interesting manner so that anybody is willing or wanting to listen? And it's so daunting, like I hardly want to come up here and say anything to you about it. But she asked, she's like, what can you talk about? Well, I can talk about this. And the research is all there in PubMed. If, for people who are smarter than I am, I'm sure you can say it with more precision, but I'm giving you ideas so that you will know. And so one thing that I have, some of the research will say, we have conflicting information. If you eat fat, then all your biome is bad. Well, you didn't specify what kind of fat. Like when I read these research papers, they clearly don't understand omega-6 and 3. They clearly don't understand, the difference between fats from healthy, organic, grass-fed animals versus factory farmed meats, right? So we do get conflicting information because not all animals are the same. Not all plants are the same. We are not going to get good results if the experience of the food, whether it is plant or animal, was not good. If we are not symbiotic with them, they will not be symbiotic with us. In my opinion, we can eat anything. And if it had a good experience, and if we have a symbiotic relationship with it, then we can be healthy. And so that's the difficult part of teasing out the research. We can't just say meat is bad or fat is bad if we don't know what genes were turned on in the meat or in the plant. And that can happen in an afternoon. In an afternoon, you can do meditation and breath work, and you can turn on and off certain genes to improve your future. The same as the experience of a cow. I often think about when I lived in Colorado briefly, I lived in an area where they had an organic farm next door, and I was told, how the mother cow had hid her baby in the field. Why? Because they were going to take her baby. And she didn't want that. What kind of trauma genes did that turn on? What kind of impact is that going to be for the milk? What about these A1, A2 things, right? These proteins in the milk. So everything is connected. We want to be kind to our food, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal. We can change genes in an instant. And so when you're reading about meat is bad, fat is bad, carbs are bad, no, they're not bad. We just want the best quality that had the best life. So I think we've talked about phthalates, BPA plastics, cadmium, and atrazine. And hats off to Tyrone B. Hayes, because he's been honest about it. They would have paid that man nearly some people's year's salary for a consult if he was willing to continue testing and testing and testing and testing. He knew there's no way that stuff was going to be okay. He won the right to talk about it and publish his paper in court, which is when I read it years ago. And yet nobody's heard of him. And we continue to eat things that are decreasing testosterone in men and women and converting it to aromatase and then to strong estrogens and destabilizing our mast cells, which are our core immune factors. So all of this gut health, it is so important that we stand up for getting our best foods with our lowest contaminants. And even though some of our foods may have cadmium, the ones in the vegetation appear to pass out a little bit better. But even if we're eating other things, if we have good iron stores, then we may not absorb it. So I think there are some simple answers. Eating very small amounts of necessary proteins. We have to have protein, and we can vary that protein. We can have our best quality nuts and seeds and wild seafood, wild grass-fed beef, but tinier amounts, and rotate them through. And the beans, organic beans and lentils. And if we're having a dried good like a tea, think twice. What was that dry harvested with, right? All right, so I'll be quiet because I know you have some things to say.
We have a minute. That's what.